I see the fight, and what I saw in that fight, I'll never forget it. What was it, fourth round? The fourth round, he did something in that fight that I had never, ever seen in my life. I had Hopkins, I had Steve Little, who was a former champion, I had Will Taylor, I had all good fighters. He put a move on this guy, and he was standing in back of him. The move was so strong that David Chappelle grabbed his gloves and did like this because he did not know where Eddie was. I said, oh, wait a minute. You know, this is kind of special here. I didn't believe it then. So what I did was, I talked to him and his dad and the crew, and I said, listen, man, I'd like to see him fight again. And because he wound up winning the decision. And it was a 4-round decision, I think it was, right? It was 6 or 8? 8. It was 8. 8. Yeah. So what I did was, I said, here's what I'm going to do. I got a fight coming up at the Blue Horizon, and you're in it. I'll put you in it. And you know who you're fighting? David Chappelle. I said, I got to see this again, because David Chappelle looked like Sonny Liston, a big version of Liston, a big guy. And he did the same thing, but this time he just beat him like it was a drum. I said, oh, I just couldn't believe it. And then, to make a long story short, we went on. He had 18 fights in the Blue Horizon. And I want to thank the people over the Blue Horizon for allowing me to promote there. And when, before that, if I back up a little bit, I needed someone to help me do this. And I went and I met Dr. Walter Lomax. And that changed my day. It changed my team's day. It changed Eddie's day. It changed our community's day. It was one of the greatest days of my life. And I actually, when I got to Doc and I was talking to him, you know, Doc was standing right there, and we were talking about what I was trying to do, and I was getting a little close to him. He started, you know, making like a little boxing stance. I said, I'm not going to hit you, Doc. You know what I mean? I said, I'm not going to throw no punches at you. You know what I mean? I said, I just want you to try and help me with this. And at first he said, well, I don't know, this and that, the other, and blah, blah, blah. We got so many things going on. Blah, blah, blah. And I came back again and again. And when you see a big 6'4", 300-something pound joker at your door all the time, maybe it might change a little, you know. But he called me one day and said, Rob, he said, why don't you put something on paper? I'm see what you might be able to do with this. You know what I mean? And that's when we started. I got my wife, who couldn't be today, because she's teaching in school in college, in university where she teaches, and she would love to have been here. And I grabbed my son, and we put together a written proposal, presented it, and Dr. Lomax became part of what we're doing. And he flew under the radar up until this time. And we did a great job with him flying under it, because this is the first public time I'm even speaking about this to anybody. And I want to thank his family, from his children to Bennett and Charles and Thomas and Sarah and all of his lovely wife, you know what I mean, Beverly, for believing in me and believing in me first, so I can extend my belief that Doc has given me into somebody else. And one of the things I must say in this whole process, I knew something when I was talking to Dr. Lomax, is that the history of boxing told me one thing, that Sugar Ray Robinson, one of the greatest fighters that ever walked the planet Earth, pound for pound, maybe the best fighter on earth that ever lived, had an African-American manager, had an African-American trainer, and had an African-American promoter. Joe Louis, who was, I mean, the second greatest thing that ever came down the pipe, African-American trainer, African-American manager, the whole 9 yards. Ali, African-American manager, African-American trainer, the whole 9 yards. So this can be done. No slight on anybody else. It ain't even about that. But what I'm saying is, it just gave me a coming up where I came from, and being able to see the things that took place in my life and stuff like that, and being able to come up and have someone who believed in me, who looks like me, and really believes in me, so I can take someone else. And I would have went, if the fighter looked like Mark. If he was the right guy, I'd have went with him. You understand me? So it's not that. I mean, it's a situation if Mark can fight like that, Mark Abrams ain't fighting like that. You know what I'm saying? So there's no knock on Mark. This is my man. But if it's right there. So to make the one thing I'm trying to say is that we did this, and there was a whole lot of people involved in it. I mean, my son, who's been a workhorse, Rob Jr., who I went to promoters when I had Eddie, and I went to biggest promoter that I thought, and that was Don King. I known Don. Muhammad Ali introduced me to Don King in the 80s, and I told him Eddie was 23-0. Were you 24-0? 23-0? Yeah, 23-0. I said, Don, I need you to help me promote this guy. I said, but there's one thing that you have to do. I said, me and my son been promoting this guy all the time, and my son got to be his co-promoter. It didn't happen. Didn't happen. So it didn't happen. I went to other promoters. Bob Arum wrote me a nice letter. Too small. At this particular time, Rob, I don't really think I can do that. But great, no problem. Dan Goosen answered my phone, agreed that my son would be the co-promoter, and we worked that thing out, and that's where we went from. One of the most important people in this whole process who led me through the waves of this whole situation was my main man, and he has to step out here, Don Elbaum. Don Elbaum, come up here. This man here has been my saving grace. My saving grace. Don Elbaum has been my saving grace because he's been in boxing for, I ain't gonna say Jack Johnson's days. I mean, I ain't gonna do that. But this guy's been around a long time. He was the guy who has brought Don King into boxing.
I apologize.
He apologized. But he brought Don into boxing. And he basically was my second set of eyes and ears for when we were bringing Eddie up and doing the things we needed to do. And Don, I want to thank you publicly for that. I want to thank the other members of our team. We got Hassan, who is our strength and conditioning person, who has basically made Eddie look what he looks like after the Samuel Peter fight when he weighed 223 pounds and got him down to 207 pounds. Come up here, Hassan. You understand me? Haas is a guy who works with us and does all the things that we need to do. You understand me? And he's a great asset to our team. We have Steve, who is Eddie's brother. Come on up here. He's his play brother, who I brought up here from Pittsburgh. This guy was in the truck when they were moving their furniture up here. I didn't know he was a fighter. He was an amateur. He had no fight. I said, who's this guy? He said, oh, he's a fighter. He's up here with us. And now Steve is 21-1 as a pro and will be, spearheading his career right behind Eddie's. He's there. We brought in Robert Hines, who is the former junior middleweight champion of the world. Robert is an asset to our situation. I want to thank my man Percy Custis, who runs. Percy, come up here, man. Come up here. You guys are here. You know what I mean? So we might as well do this, and I'm going to let Eddie talk. Percy Custis, who runs James Schuler's gym out in West Philadelphia. He runs the James Schuler gym that we train at every day. He does all the stuff. And underneath the gym, and this is something that I know the mayor would appreciate. Percy had a car wash that he was using to detail cars underneath the gym. Upstairs over the gym, he had stuff like this. And he told me, he said, Rob, I want to do something for this community, and I want to do some stuff real strong for young people. And since that time, he opened up a full-scale, state-approved daycare center underneath the gym that serves his children so their parents can go to work and stuff like this. And this is a guy who's also a champion of our cause, and we appreciate him.